Thank you, Elaine, for a very generous introduction. I have an excellent panel lined up here because the last panel really talked about where we are in policy. This next one is really talking about taking some of the great opportunities that are available right now and turning it into action. And before I get introducing Rebecca and Rich here, I want to set the table for us, and I want to ask an open question. When was the last time in our nation's history that rail had access to funding that was anywhere near parity to what highways and airports get? When was it? I've got one over here. What do you say? Not quite. You got it. I think it dates back to the railroad land grants that really developed the part of the country that we're in now. That's how long it's been. Up until then, we've been competing against heavily, lavishly subsidized modes. Right now, there's enough federal funding where suddenly we have parity and there's a great opportunity available to us. How we get it is a different question, because instead of land grants now, we're looking at discretionary grants that are competitive. To get those, we really have to have consensus and a lot of different pieces come together to build each application. And so just to show how do we win a grant, right? This is, as a railroad economist, I'm used to talking about how our mode is different. Well, right now, today, I'm taking an unusual step of talking about something that's actually the same. How do you get a grant? What elements do you need? How do you win them? How do you get that federal award? Well, at DEA, we have a simple set of precepts that I just want to talk about because I think that you're going to see them reflected in the very real projects that we see that we're going to be talking about in just a moment. And really, this stuff is simple, but it is not necessarily obvious, and it's not necessarily talked about enough. When you go for a grant, so often we get calls from agencies and different stakeholders, and my goodness, there's an OFO, a notice of funding opportunity. It's out in the street. It's been out for a month. It's due next month, and we've got this project. We almost have it defined. Can you help us get it done? And it's like, well, maybe. The thing is, the best approach is to encompass multiple grants. Oh, pardon, I went one slide too far there. The best approach is to encompass multiple grants. Sometimes you have multiple grant opportunities that will fit a project, and it really behooves that you get incredibly familiar with the number of grant opportunities that are available. And as we've heard over the last couple of days, those opportunities are just so numerous, and they affect so many different aspects of policy. So when you look at multiple grants, you really increase your odds, because oftentimes you won't win a project on the first go. Sometimes you have to split a project into pieces and go for multiple grants. When you adopt a mentality of multiple grants, that really puts you in a good position to manage your time effectively. That's the other big thing. When you manage your time effectively, suddenly NOFOs, they don't come as surprises. You know when they're coming, and you have an idea and a strategy for how to lay them out and to really apply for it. The other part of this is the story of grants and the language behind them. And to tell it succinctly, I really like to say you have to make them cry, because you've got to tell a story, and you have to tell it to grant reviewers that sometimes aren't really familiar with your project or your region. And after you've made them cry, you've got to back it up with data. Now, this means that you're going to develop your narrative and your story really well. And this is going to help you, and I think perhaps the most crucial component of this, which is getting multiple partners. Because if you tell your story well, it's going to be much easier to get that congressional or gubernatorial support. And as we heard yesterday, sometimes when a granting agency is between a couple of different projects in a given state, you heard it from the mouths yesterday, they'll call a governor, they'll call a senator and ask, what's your priority? And unless you have that priority lined up, unless you've already had those conversations, you won't be a part of the award. There's another kind of partner that we're going to really focus on today that's been quiet for a long time, but I think that it's really important that we do as much as we can to treat this actor in the space much like you would a senator or a governor, and take the same kind of care and time to the approach of outreach so you can get them on board and begin to move with projects. Because I think as you're going to learn over the next two speakers we have here, There is a lot happening, and it's railroads that are going to help us make them happen. Now that there is finally funding available where communities, different eligible entities and railroads can move together and secure some of this funding. So with that, I want to introduce Rebecca Geyer, who's joining us remotely. She is an AICP certified planner that leads the planning and rail grants team at the North Dakota DOT. She grew up near Bismarck. She previously worked in Missouri for MoDOT for 11 years, and she's been back in North Dakota for 11 and a half years. Rebecca has her bachelor's degree from NDSU, an MBA from the University of Minnesota Moorhead, plus certifications as a project manager professional and senior professional in human resources. She's been working as a strategic planner responsible for plans, grants, rail programs, and performance management practices for a little over 22 years. Rebecca and her husband, Damien, have 2 teenage daughters, Nicolette and Samantha. And sitting here beside me is Rich Scott, who has been with BNSF Railroad for over 9 years. With a civil engineering background, he has served in various engineering and support roles in that time, and currently works as the Assistant Director for Public Projects for BNSF North Region. He and his team collaborate daily with federal, state, and local agencies to implement infrastructure projects that drive safety and service outcomes for BNSF and the public. He currently lives in Minneapolis, and I got to talk to you about that because I like the breweries out there a lot. One final note before Rebecca takes over. I just want to say, I've brought through these 4 precepts, through multiple grants, managing of time, really developing a narrative that works and getting partners. And does it work? Well, does it ever? If you listen to people here, the RAISE grant is rather competitive. And using these precepts in partnership with BNSF Railroad in the city of Blaine, Washington, we here at DEA secured a $9.5 million RAISE grant for a very complicated grade crossing in Blaine, Washington. It involves everything there. We had a great lot of fun doing it with these great partners. And this is just the first of many examples you're going to hear about where we get this money out of the feds and on the ground. So with that, please, Rebecca, take it on.
Hi there. As I get my presentation up here, I want to thank you for the introduction. It was wonderful. Hi, I'm Rebecca Geyer, and I work in the Planning and Asset Management Division of North Dakota DOT. I'm happy to share with you the grants team's success on some award-winning projects here in North Dakota. North Dakota DOT has been pretty successful applying for discretionary grants funding overall. We've had success with these 2 particular rail grant applications, and I'm sorry, it's disconcerting because I have 2 screens and I'm hoping you're seeing the screen with the slides. The first grant was a Tiger grant for the rail grade raise in Devil's Lake. Tiger has changed its name a couple of times. It's gone from Tiger to Build, and now it's known as Raise. We requested $30 million and received $10 million in funding for a $90 million project. The total cost of the Tiger Grade Raise project was nearly $100 million at completion. We partnered with Amtrak and BNSF for this project, and BNSF shared quite a lot of the load on this particular project because it pulled their freight rail out of the water as well as Amtrak. The performance measures used were slow order minutes and water levels that were reported after completion for 5 years after the grant project was closed. The next grant I'll talk to you about is a Safe Transport of Energy Products by Rail, or the STEP grant. We received that $1.032 million for that grant to upgrade highway rail crossings along the passenger rail corridor in North Dakota. That's all BNSF lines, so BNSF was a partner in that. The STEP grant was a wonderful supplement to our Section 130 fiscally constrained funding. And for those of you in the room that may not know what Section 130 is, it's Federal Highway Administration funding to enhance safety at highway rail crossings, and they have to be existing crossings for them to qualify. My team only has budget for Section 130 projects, and it very occasionally has money via grant awards like these. The Devil's Lake grade raise, as you can see from the photographs on the slide, was pretty critical. The lake was rising and we had to get ahead of it, and it was already interrupting service. And so we replaced 52 miles of bolted rail with continuous welded rail and switches. Engineering, construction management, crossing adjustments, and other incidental work were all part of this project. There's some more. Oh, I jumped ahead. There's some more photos of that area. You can see the double line in the middle on the picture on the left is the highway, and the rail is further off to the left, that thin line. The entire project included grade raises to some extent along that length of track. The photo above shows a section. Well, actually, the photo on the bottom right shows a section that was elevated 5 feet, and the photograph was taken from eastbound US 2 on the final inspection. This project completed on time. For the STEP grant, we installed 4 new signal systems on crossings over double main rail lines. The 4 sketches at the bottom are all the signals that we improved. Those are the layout sketches from the contract. 78.5% of the project funding came from the Safe Transport of Energy Products by Rail STEP grant award. 1.07 million was the total final cost, and we used 841,262 of the 1.03 million awarded funds. So we fell short of meeting the anticipated goals for a couple different reasons. One of the crossings got fixed before we were able to get under contract with FRA. So our agreement, you can't start a project until your agreement is in place. But we shared cost on that project with BNSF Railway, and improved 19 incandescent flashing lights to LED lights. So upgraded those lights on 19 crossings that were already signalized before. And this project also completed on time and under budget. Rail in North Dakota is all privately owned and operated. The federal government agents in North Dakota deem rail transportation as a utility, which allows for a bit more freedom when it comes to projects on the rail. Grants at federal level see our projects as benefiting private businesses unless we can compel them to understand that safe rail transport is a benefit to all. And I thank you for having me here today. I don't know if you want me to address questions now or at the end of the panel, so I'll leave it up to you.
I think we'll go ahead and ask that you, after that excellent presentation, ask that you kindly remain online, and I think we'll take questions at the end after Rich's presentation.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Mhm.
All right,
Fantastic. Would you prefer the podium or to sit here next to me?
sit here. We'll have like a fireside chat.
Sounds great. Okay.
All right, yeah, I appreciate the introduction and glad to be here. I was joking I should have gone earlier in the week with the panel because I feel like a lot of the thunder has already been taken. All the talk already on collaboration and partnerships, but I can still offer some tangible examples around success that will hopefully spur some ideas, some discussion around how you can work with freight railroads on getting projects across the finish line, getting those applications awarded. Because until rail has some significant formulaic funding, we're all going to have to be good at applications. Do you have the?
I do actually. Pardon me 1 second.
On applications, BNSF is not an eligible applicant, not directly anyway. So we do have to make friends, and I'm happy to trade business cards with anyone in the room that is an eligible applicant. We know that most of these grants have a theme that change with administrations, so we do have to be adaptable there in finding mutually beneficial projects within those themes that justify a real dollar BNSF contribution or in-kind contribution toward that local non-federal match. And we're not shy about relaying the elements that we're looking for in a project that will get some private dollars. Those are all the buckets. If your project falls into one of them, checks the boxes, BNSF can put money toward it. And that's the way the US DOT is going as well, is which projects have exponential benefits to safety and across modes. One-off grade separations just aren't that attractive anymore. But if that grade separation is outside of a yard and maybe you're mitigating trespassing in the yard with that through channelization, closing multiple crossings, that's going to be an award-winning project, an easy award. And on the service interruption box here and what the project will focus on, as Rebecca kind of got to with her presentation, is the hot topic for Pinwar has been resiliency. There's been a lot of talk about that. I think that offers the most opportunity for partnership and for those award-winning projects, especially if you're talking about safely advancing passenger rail. It's no secret that extreme weather events are getting more common. High temperatures in Boise this week, over 100 degrees. We're spending billions on disaster relief every year, and I myself am involved in billion-dollar projects in Minot and in Fargo to mitigate flooding. So these events are impactful, and they certainly threaten the reliability and resiliency of both freight and passenger rail. It's much less flexible to reroute or go around when you have a single line compared to highway or roadways. So I should preface this with no people or trains were harmed in the making of this slide. I imagine if there's any emergency response team members are breaking out into a cold sweat, but it is stomach churning to think about the possibility of a passenger train coming upon an avalanche or a rock fall or an event like this. So yeah, as I had been talking about, this is where the most award-winning opportunity is, like the Devil's Lake track raise. This is what BNSF is already doing on our own to harden our railroad. We're investing in our own network to make it more resilient for our freight customers. So these are the projects we're most excited to partner on because it makes all of our dollars go further. We're already putting in building up a reliable network on our own. Take switch heaters here, for example. Think about a passenger train arriving at a crossover or a switch point and not being able to move because that switch is jammed with snow. It needs to be cleaned out. So you have to wait for a maintenance worker to come and they're sweeping out the switch while you've got a train full of passengers behind you. That's why in the Chicago area with Metra, we've partnered on so many switch heater locations. And a great example there. Oh.
Some of the media not working.
Well, I just lost part of the slide there. But I can, well.
So we're looking at the South Puget Sound, it looks like.
Yeah, I can at least set the stage for you here. If you've not ridden along the Puget Sound through Amtrak Cascades or on the Sounder, you've got the Puget Sound waterfront right on one side and bluffs on the other. So you think now what a dumb place to build a railroad, but back in the day, you didn't have the problems you see today with landslides because the little village of Seattle of 1,200 people when it was first being built in 1870. Of course, you didn't have the development and paving paradise that you have now and all the water runoff onto those bluffs. But this is really getting into the weeds of the federal grant benefits and partnerships of today, this ongoing series of CRISI grants that we partnered with WashDOT on to reduce blocking events, which every time there is a blocking event, a landslide, debris over the tracks, there's a 48-hour moratorium on passenger rail service, which you might recognize. Frequent events like that might cause a perception that this service is unreliable for those that depend on that mode of transportation, and they might seek out other modes. So I like this slide here because it's evidence of the real success of that investment made in the CRISI program, the slide mitigation projects, where again, all of our dollars went further on win-win-win projects to mitigate these slides and create reliable service for both passenger and freight. There's real tangible reduction in the number of incidents to prevent those passenger moratorium, where people instead shift to buses or their own personal vehicles, which I'm convinced, every passenger rail advocate is just has really bad road rage and wants to get every other car off the road. So this is good. And here are some before and after photos of the work that's been done and is ongoing with WashDOT in that partnership. And this goes hand in hand with some local education, working with landowners that live at the top of these hills, making sure that, they're not throwing grass clippings down the slope and they hold water where you're just saturating the bottom of the slope. Oh man, we're just having bad luck with this presentation. Missing all the points here. This is another quick project highlight, and the Amtrak Steve Gardner this morning spoke a lot about focus on, not only the cool stuff, the new stuff, but also making sure we maintain our existing assets. So this is just one good example of that, and really speaks to that trade-off, the benefits between public and private, where BNSF contributed 70% toward this project and received 30% funding, public funding through a raise grant, with our franchise standing to benefit the most for this. So can't really see it. This is the Salmon Bay Bridge rehab, where we are replacing the counterweight and making sure the bridge really doesn't get stuck either in an open or closed position or somewhere in between where trains can't pass through, boats can't pass through. It would have been a nightmare situation. So we're glad to see this one moving forward as a winner. I don't know if we're able to fix the presentation at all. Oh boy. Are you able to pull up the
Perhaps the PDF.
PDF?
What you're missing here is a picture of a truly gigantic Bashkill bridge.
Yeah.
One of the kinds that, goes like this, and it's over the Seattle Ship Canal that sees an ungodly amount of marine traffic between Lake Washington and the Puget Sound. And so it's an incredibly important corridor for multiple dimensions. It has Amtrak trains. It's got sounder service. It's a really big, impressive thing. So
I would hate for you all to miss the pictures. That's like the best part of any presentation.
while they're pulling up the presentation, we're going to talk about a number of awards that have been made in somewhat real time. We're talking about stuff that's hitting, that's being awarded right now. The federal government is saturated with applications. And they're announcing all of these awards where we've won X millions of dollars to do something. But that's just really the first part of it. And so now that we have this raise grant for Salmon Bay Bridge, for instance, Rich, what happens now? How do we get that money and get it on the ground? How do we make it happen?
Sure, we're working through that right now with WashDOT and the FRA to now obligate that money. And there's some in-water work we'd like to get done this year. So we're really having to expedite some things with the FRA, go through the NEPA process, all of that to make sure everything's squared away.
Yeah, certainly. And perhaps what Rebecca can weigh in as well, because of course, winning it is really just the easy part, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Grants are never easy, but yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I don't know that you could see my air quotes there. So, and so, but in your experience after having obligation, what is what does it look, what did it look like for you in Missouri and North Dakota after you won a grant? What was it like?
There's a lot of red tape that comes along with grants. We as a grantee end up assuring the federal government we are going to follow several reporting and methods to meet the grant requirements. So we have to assure that Buy America is done on the project. We have to assure that Title VI or non-discrimination laws are practiced and followed, and not that we don't do that already anyway. As a state DOT, we're probably best poised for that because we do that normally. But when we work with somebody who doesn't have those systems in place, there's checks and balances that we need to meet on a report, and have really good relationships with our federal granting agency, as well as all of our partners on the project. For both states, I'm not an engineer. So for both, in my experience in both states, I have to partner with several people to get it done because it takes a certain type of expertise to get each part of the project done. I manage at the higher level. I work with engineers and staff with the railroad to get the project done. And I make sure that we report correctly and stay in compliance and tie it up with a bow. Performance measures are a big challenge for us. Finding things that will show the impact of the project and will not take extreme measures to get that data so that we can report on it is key. When I said we went with lost time and I don't have my presentation up anymore, but we measured the rail grade raise in Devil's Lake with slow order minutes and water levels, and the slow order minutes we would get from BNSF, and the water levels we would get from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we find ways to meet the requirements. We've been around doing these types of projects for a long time, and I know who to ask to get certain things done.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
I don't think, absolutely. I don't think that experience can be overstated in the space, and also a little bit of knowing where the bodies are buried too.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. Exactly. I think a fresh version of the presentation has just been provided, so I think it should be up shortly so we can get to the, I would say, the rest of the meat in Rich's presentation here. I'm especially excited for the next section, so he's giving me the signal here. And here we go. Great.
Sweet.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, great. Yeah. And as you can see, did I oversell the bridge? Look at that thing. Yeah.
So, all right. Oh, you got to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, might have to just advance. Perfect. There we go. And here we go to upstate Idaho. Another great example of crossing consolidation, a grade separation right outside our major fueling facility at Hauser on our northern transcon, which equates to a higher level of contribution from us for the multiple closures and the fact that it would benefit our operations at Hauser. A great example of an award-winning project here in the state of Idaho. And corridor approach, as I had alluded to earlier, which offers those exponential benefits to safety and mobility. And next slide, or, all right, there we go. So those were just a handful of examples that I had. There were so many to choose from. I think it's a good problem to have when you have so many award-winning projects. They won't all fit on the slide. And this is just for RCE that was announced in June there.
It's a rail crossing elimination.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep. I figure we all live in a world of acronyms now. So $252 million toward BNS projects that impact BNSF right of way out of the 571 million that was awarded. So we have a strong connection, a strong partnership that we've developed with the agencies that we work with to get to this level of really funding for projects on our network. And next slide. Oh, there we go. So these are just the keys to success. How do you get to that award-winning project? We've talked a lot about collaboration, and we can collaboratively beat the collaboration drum continually here, but it's almost preaching to the choir. Now, what is the action item for you all in the room taking this back to communities and working with them, getting that message out that the railroads are here to partner on these kind of projects. And one unofficial item I might add is buttering up attorneys, because they seem to be an obstacle sometimes, a hurdle, but important. And next slide, because everyone loves acronyms, BNSF developed our own. So this is the secret sauce to success, starting, of course, with safety. Again, we're eager to partner on any projects. I'll take business cards. So that concludes my presentation.
So before we open it to the floor, I do have one more question. I blew one as filler, but in the meantime, would we say that these, I mean, it's evident, as you could see from the grant history we saw on the corridor hardening projects in the Pacific Northwest, just north of my hometown of Seattle, that this has been in a relationship that has been budding really since the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and I think that was just in the wake of the recession around 2008. That, of course, was a magnitude of order less funding than we have today. But would you say that the development of these programs and the growth and development of new programs that are relevant to railroad infrastructure have incentivized railroad collaboration with the communities?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yes, you almost get into this rat race, not only among agencies across state lines and local agencies, but within the railroads as well, kind of driving support. For example, with RCE this round, BNSF projects that impact BNSF received 44% of the funding. Union Pacific got 12, 15%, not that anybody's counting. So it'll be interesting to see, do the other railroads sit on the sidelines, or do they get more engaged with communities with some of the funding out there, taking advantage of the opportunity to leverage their dollars with some public investment into their networks?
And with that, I don't think I have access to the Whova questions if any have come through, but I'd very much like to open it to the floor. Are there any questions I can bring a mic to? Okay, I've got one. Oh.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentations. Bob Hoskow from Washington State. Actually, this question is for Ms. Geyer, because I'm very interested in the financing aspects of these projects and how we develop adequate financing. And I know that the Bank of North Dakota has a general mission to support the people of North Dakota, but I was just wondering how much of that Devil Lake project may or may not have been financed by the Bank of North Dakota, or your transportation projects generally and infrastructure projects?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't work in the finance area of the department, But I know that I came on board right when the Devil's Lake project was just getting started, and I believe those funds were state funds in the North Dakota DOT's budget. The Bank of North Dakota comes into play in some of our other grants for infrastructure. We've been able to use that as some leverage as innovative financing, since it is the only state-owned bank in the US. And it's definitely an area that can offer some leverage with loans and things for grant, we call it match, grant cost share amounts. But we've only used it as funding for a grant in my memory when it was legislatively in North Dakota, legislatively, we were given permission to do so for a specific project.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from the floor?
Thank you. Another Washington State Legislator, Cindy Ryu. In the next 5 years, we are expecting to receive 1.2 billion for broadband expansion. So does BNSF already work with ISPs, or would you be willing to work with ISPs because we're going to get the DOT to help us with assessing what the current assets are, and then whether we can work well with them as well?
Sure. Yeah, we already have long haul fiber on many parts of our network, especially across the north, to get to more rural areas that serve hospitals and schools and things like that. So yes, we already leverage our network for that. Of course, there's a cost that comes with that.
Really excellent questions coming in so far. Did you have one over here? Great, okay.
Well, I guess I have a question for both of you and trying to think about creating. Oh, I'm Dan Bilka with All Aboard Northwest, the regional organization. Kind of a question for both of you. With successful projects or putting together successful applications, about how important is it getting both local support and vocal local support? So like letters of support, even if they aren't able to really do any sort of cash matches that way. Have you found that to be as valuable, if not maybe more valuable than just simply a cash dollar amount?
Rich, do you want me to handle it first, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Local support is paramount. You need to be able to show that it's not just the DOT and BNSF that wants the money. Whether or not they share in the funding is not as critical. But when you're competing against, and you're not just competing against 50 states, you're competing against 50 states, DC, all the US territories, and in a lot of cases, grassroots communities come up and tribal nations come up and take the money as well. So you have to be aware that your application needs to compete against anybody and everybody. And a local community could put in a grant application and get the money you're looking for. So you need to have everyone who is impacted in the area, the region, have them on board, have them fill out a letter of support. You write a draft letter of support for them to sign. They can modify and put it on their letterhead and sign it and send it to you to include in that project. It's one of the top priorities that we have next to the actual grant writing.
And I would add, local support is an essential component for us because we are not an eligible applicant, but also because the type of projects we're talking about now are generational community transforming projects to a large extent. So you want that local support. Otherwise, it's just BNSF imposing our will on the locals, which, it's never a good look. So yeah, answer your question, it is essential.
Did I not tell you that the themes that we opened up with would be repeated? throughout the process. But we got to say it at least 3 times. So I think we got one more for each at least before everybody can walk away and make sure that we have it down. So anybody else from the floor or anybody from the Hoover app, if some of the Penware people are clued into that and we're not picking up on some online participants. Until I get a thumbs up from one of the Penware folks, I think in that case, it seems as if we can give you the balance of the time in this presentation and we can actually have a full break for once.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you to our 2 presenters. I think, it's incredibly important to understand how we can build the partnerships that we need to go after these grants successfully. I loved some of these examples. I think all of us are looking forward to digging in locally and figuring out what the partnerships are that we need to work on now, or at least I know I am. So you do have a bit of a break here. We are back here for lunch. You can leave stuff on the table if you'd like. It will be a buffet lunch. They'll be clearing off at least the glasses and stuff. But if you want to leave your personal items either on the table or in the chair, you're welcome to do that. We'll be back here for lunch at 12:15. At least that's when the remarks begin. You're welcome to come back a little bit early and get your lunch and sit at the table. We're really excited about our lunch keynote. For those of you who don't follow Transportation for America and John Robert Smith, you're in for a real treat. He's a former mayor, a former Amtrak board member, and a former chair of the Amtrak board. And so he brings a tremendous amount of insight into the things that we're talking about. So enjoy your break and we'll see you back here around noon to get your food and 12:15 for the keynote.